A cold wind brushed against the trees, making the leaves whisper like unseen voices in the night. Deep in a quiet barrio, where the night stretched long and the stars flickered like teeny candles, there lived a boy named Kaloy. He was only 8 years old, a small and fragile child, but there was something different about him. Kaloy was blind. Since birth, darkness had been his only world, but he had learned to navigate life in ways others couldn't understand. His ears caught sounds that no one else noticed, and his skin felt the slightest shift in the wind. Some said his other senses were sharper than normal. Others whispered that he had a gift. Kaloy lived with his Lola Berta, an old woman with a frail body but a strong spirit. She took care of him ever since his parents died in an accident. Their house was small, made of bamboo and nipa, standing at the edge of the forest. The people in the barrio often warned them not to go out at night, especially during the dark moon, when the alley was empty and shadows stretched long. Stories of the Aswang had been passed down for generations, creatures that prowled the night, looking for their next victim. Some took the form of animals, some appeared human, but they all had one thing in common: they thirsted for flesh. One evening, Lola Berta sat on the wooden floor, counting the small coins she had left. Times were hard, and food was running low. She sighed, worried about how they would get through the coming days. "Kaloy, apo, bukas pupunta ako sa bayan para bumili ng bigas," she said. "Dito ka lang sa bahay ha. Huwag kang lalabas kahit anong mangyari." Kaloy nodded. He knew the rules well. Stay inside. Never answer if someone calls from the darkness. Never open the door for anyone at night. But that night, something felt different. A strange heaviness hung in the air, as if something unseen was watching. He could hear it, feel it, an unfamiliar presence lurking beyond the trees. The night deepened, and the wind carried the sound of rustling leaves. Then came the noise, soft at first, like the distant sirai of an animal, but soon it grew louder. A scratching sound against the bamboo walls. Kaloy sat up, his heart pounding. He turned his head, listening carefully. A voice followed, low and hoarse, calling his name. "Kaloy, buksan mo ang pinto," it was a woman's voice. But something about it was wrong. It was hollow, unnatural, like an echo in an empty house. Lola Berta had warned him about this. He pressed his hands over his ears and stayed silent. The voice came again, more insistent. "Kaloy, po si Lola Berta ito," his breath hitched. It sounded just like her. Exactly like her. But that was impossible. She had just left for the town that morning. He knew she wouldn't be back until sunrise. His grip on the mat tightened. "Hindi ikaw si Lola," he whispered. The scratching grew more violent, turning into loud thuds against the wood. The walls creaked as if something heavy was pressing against them. Kaloy's mind raced. He couldn't see, but he knew, he felt, that whatever was out there was not human. The air inside the house turned cold. Then, a long, wet slurping sound came from outside the window, followed Eli, a low growl. The scent of rotten meat drifted in. Kaloy shivered. He had heard stories from the elders, stories of an aswang that could not be seen, one that moved through shadows and fed on fear. He crawled toward the small altar in the corner, feeling for the bottle of holy water Lola Berta always kept. His hands trembled as he clutched it tightly, his heart pounding against his ribs. The banging on the wall stopped. The night grew eerily silent. Then, in the darkness, something breathed. It was inside the house. Kaloy's grip on the bottle of holy water tightened. He held his breath, listening carefully. The house was small, but in that moment, it felt vast, every shadow stretching long, every creak of the bamboo floor louder than it should be. Something was inside with him. He could feel it, a presence thick like heavy air pressing against his skin. The scent of something foul, like meat left too long in the sun, drifted closer. His heart pounded in his chest, his small body frozen in place. He wanted to scream, but he knew better. Lola Berta had always told him, do not let them hear your fear. Fear makes you weak. Fear makes them stronger. He squeezed his eyes shut, as if that would make difference, but of course, darkness was all he had ever known. A slow creak came from the floorboards near the doorway. Something was moving inside. Kaloy listened closely, his ears sharp, picking up the softest sounds. He could hear its breathing, deep and slow, like it was sniffing the air, searching. Kaloy, the voice called again, softer this time, almost a whisper. It was trying to trick him. He knew it wasn't Lola Berta. But the way it spoke, the way it imitated her voice so perfectly, sent a shiver down his spine. He clenched his fists, his small nails digging into his palms. He had to think. He had to remember everything Lola Berta had taught him. Aswangs were clever. They could change their form, trick the eyes, the ears, even the mind. But they were not all-powerful. They had weaknesses. The bottle of holy water felt cool in his hands. He knew it could hurt the Aswang, but he had to be careful. If he moved too suddenly, it might attack. A scraping sound came from the wall near the window. Then, the creak of bamboo as if something heavy was shifting its weight. The thing was moving closer. It wasn't just sniffing the air anymore. It was searching for him. Kaloy took a slow, silent breath. He pressed himself against the wooden floor, trying to make himself as small as possible. His fingers traced the woven mat beneath him, grounding himself. The voice came again, softer, almost pleading now. Kaloy. Apo, huwag kang matakot, lies. He knew better. Lola Berta had told him long ago about the aswang that once haunted their barrio. How it would call to people using the voices of their loved ones, luring them outside, making them easy prey. But Kaloy was not going to fall for it then, crack. A sudden, loud snap echoed through the room. The wooden door, locked with a simple wooden latch, rattled violently. The thing outside was no longer pretending. It was impatient now. Kaloy's breathing grew faster. He gripped the bottle tighter, feeling the weight of it in his small hands. He had to act before it got in. A gust of wind blew through the small window, making the curtain sway. And then he heard it, footsteps. Not just from inside, but outside too. More than one. Kaloy's stomach twisted. There's more than one? The bamboo walls shook as the thing outside scraped its claws down the wood. The scent of rotting flesh thickened in the air. Then, tap tap tap. Soft, careful knocks on the door. Not loud. Not violent. Gentle. Almost polite. But Kaloy knew. It wasn't human. He clutched the bottle of holy water against his chest. The knocks came again. Tap tap tap. Then the voice spoke once more, but this time, it was not trying to sound like Lola Berta. It was whispering in a language he didn't understand. A low, guttural murmur, like words spoken through a mouth full of sharp teeth. Kaloy's blood turned cold. And then, the door slowly began to creak open. The door creaked open just an inch, but to Kaloy, it felt like a gaping hole into something dark and unknown. His breath hitched. His grip on the bottle of holy water tightened until his fingers turned white. He wanted to move, to run, to hide, but where? The house was small. There was nowhere to go. The whispering voice outside had stopped. The night was eerily silent again, but the presence was still there. He could feel it, a heavy weight in the air, pressing against his chest, making it harder to breathe. Then, just beyond the crack of the door, he heard it, something wet dragging against the wooden floor, a sound like bare flesh being pulled across bamboo slats. His stomach turned. He forced himself not to make a sound. If it didn't know exactly where he was, maybe just maybe, it wouldn't find him. A sudden gust of wind blew through the window, making the flame of the small gas lamp flicker. Shadows danced across the walls. In that brief, trembling light, Kaloy saw movement, something shifting near the door. Not the person. Not an animal. Something in between. His heart pounded so hard he thought the thing might hear it. He squeezed his eyes shut, hoping, praying that it would just leave. Then, a voice, low and hoarse, like it was being dragged from a throat full of broken glass. Apo, it wasn't his Lola's voice anymore. It was something else. Something wrong. Kaloy pressed his back against the wall, his small body trembling. He clutched the holy water close to his chest, the cold bottle the only thing grounding him. He knew he had to do something. He couldn't just sit there, waiting for it to come closer. Slowly, he reached for the small woven pouch Lola Berta always carried. He had felt it earlier, beside the altar, filled with dried herbs and salt. Protection, she had told him once. He didn't know if it would work, but right now, he had no choice but to trust her words. He grabbed the pouch and, with shaking hands, tore it open. The dried herbs spilled onto the floor, their scent mixing with the sickly, rotting smell in the air. He flung the rest toward the door, praying it would do something. The reaction was immediate. A sharp, guttural screech filled the small house. The thing on the other side of the door recoiled, slamming against the wooden walls so hard the whole house shook. The door, still barely open, rattled violently, as if something was clawing at it in blind rage. Kaloy pressed his hands over his ears, his body curling in on itself as the screeching grew louder, more unbearable. Then, suddenly, silence. He waited. 5 seconds. 10. A full minute. Nothing. The night was quiet again, except for the sound of his own ragged breathing. Had it left? Kaloy swallowed hard. He wanted to believe it was over, but something inside him whispered that it wasn't. And then, the sound returned. Not at the door. Not outside. Inside. From the ceiling. His blood ran cold. Slowly, he tilted his head upward, his unseeing eyes wide, his ears straining. The roof was made of dried palm leaves, woven together. It was thin. He had never paid attention to it before, never thought of it as something fragile, until now. A slow, deliberate scraping sound moved across the ceiling, right above him. Long, dragging claws against bamboo. It hadn't left. It had changed its way in. Kaloy's mind raced. He needed to do something fast. The holy water. It was his only weapon now. His hands trembled as he uncorked the bottle. He aimed it upward, toward the sound, and whispered a shaky prayer. Then, with all the strength he had, he flung the water toward the roof. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, blood-curdling scream tore through the air, louder than before, full of rage and pain. The house shook as something heavy slammed against the roof. The scent of burnt flesh filled the room, as if the holy water had seared through skin. Kaloy clamped his hands over his ears, his body curled tightly as the thing thrashed above him. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the screaming stopped. Silence. A cold wind slipped through the window. The scent of decay lingered, but the presence it was gone. Kaloy didn't move for a long time. His body was frozen, his breath shallow. He waited, listening, feeling for any sign that it was still there. Minutes passed. And then, just as he allowed himself to take deep breath, thinking he was safe, a single knock echoed through the silence. Tap. 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 From the window this time. And a whisper followed, soft and mocking. Apo, Kaloy's breath caught in his throat. The knock at the window was soft, almost teasing, as if whatever was out there knew he was terrified. He clenched his fists, willing himself not to move, not to make a sound. But the whisper that followed, low, stretched, and sickly sweet, sent chill through his bones. Apo, it was playing with him. The thing outside wasn't gone. It was just waiting, circling, testing him. The thought made his stomach twist. His whole body tensed as he listened carefully, his ears straining against the heavy silence of the night. The window creaked slightly, the old bamboo frame shifting under light pressure. Something was pressing against it, watching. Kaloy tightened his grip on the near-empty bottle of holy water. He had heard it once. He could do it again. But was it enough? The pouch of herbs had slowed it down, the holy water had burned it, but the creature was still here. Still hunting him. He needed to think. His mind raced, searching for something, anything, that could help. Then, a memory surfaced. Lola Berta's voice, stern but full of wisdom. Aswang's fear light. The gas lamp. Kaloy's fingers scrambled across the wooden floor, searching for the lamp. His hands found the metal handle, still warm from earlier. The flame inside flickered weakly, barely holding on, but he knew, if he could make the fire stronger, brighter, it might be enough to drive the creature away. Outside, the knock came again. Tap. 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 Then, something new. El breath. Long, slow, and damp, like something exhaling against the thin bamboo walls. It was closer. Kaloy's fingers trembled as he felt around for the small bottle of oil Lola Berta kept near the altar. If he could pour it into the lamp, make the flame rise, the window groaned. Then, a whisper, closer this time. Right against the wooden slats. Kaloy. Apo. Alam kong gising ka pa, the voice was different now. Not his Lola's anymore. Not human. Something sharp scraped against the bamboo, slow and deliberate. Claws. He could hear them curling against the wood, pressing just hard enough to make the structure creak. Kaloy swallowed hard. His fingers found the bottle of oil. He fumbled with the cap, his hands slick with sweat. The creature outside inhaled deeply, like it was savoring his fear. He had to move. Now. With shaking hands, he poured the oil into the gas lamp. The flame inside wavered, then grew. A soft glow spread across the room, pushing back the shadows. The reaction was immediate. A sharp, inhuman hiss sliced through the silence, followed Eli, sudden thud against the window. The house shook as the thing outside slammed against it, harder this time. The flame inside the lamp flickered wildly, casting trembling shadows across the walls. Kaloy held his breath. Then, everything went still. No knocking. No scratching. Just silence. He gripped the lamp tightly, his heart hammering in his chest. His ears strained against the quiet. Was it gone? The bamboo walls creaked. The roof shifted. No, it wasn't gone. It was above him. His pulse thundered in his ears as he slowly tilted his head upward. The roof was thin, nothing but dried palm leaves woven together. If it could crawl across it, it could break through. Then, a slow, dragging sound. Claws scraping against the palm fronds, moving steadily. It was looking for a way in. Kaloy gripped the lamp tighter, the warm metal grounding him. His breathing came in short, quiet gasps. He knew he couldn't stay in one place. If he did, he was as good as dead. He had to get out. But how? The only way out was through the door. And he didn't know what was waiting for him outside. The house groaned as something pressed against the roof, the dried leaves rustling under the weight. Then, a slow, deliberate tearing sound. It was breaking through. Kaloy's body moved before his mind could catch up. He longed for the small bag Lola Berta had left near the door, the one she always carried to the market. His hands scrambled inside, searching, until his fingers closed around something familiar. A box of matches. Hope sparked in his chest. Fire. He had fire. But would it be enough? Above him, the sound of tearing grew louder. Small bits of dried leaves rained down on his head. He had no choice. Kaloy took a deep breath. And then, the roof split open. A sharp, splintering sound ripped through the air as the roof tore open. Palm fronds and dust rained down, the weak gaslight flickering wildly against the swirling debris. Kaloy barely had time to roll to the side before something heavy crashed onto the wooden floor where he had been sitting just moments ago. The stench hit him first, thick, rotten, clinging to his skin like smoke. His fingers clenched around the box of matches as he scrambled backward, his breathing rag. He didn't need to see to know that the thing was there, just inches away from him. He could feel it then, the floor creaked. A low, guttural breath filled the space between them. The thing had landed. It was inside. Kaloy swallowed hard. His fingers fumbled with the matches, his palms slick with sweat. He had fire. He had the lamp. But was it enough? The silence stretched. Then, tap tap tap. The sound came from the broken roof above, from outside. Another set of footsteps. More than one. Kaloy's blood ran cold. There wasn't just one. His mind raced, pieces clicking together too late. The aswang outside had never truly left. It had been waiting. Calling the others. A slow, slithering movement scraped against the floorboards. The one inside shifted, its breath uneven, sniffing the air. Then, in a voice that barely sounded human, it murmured, "Natagpuan na kita." Kaloy's heart nearly stopped. He did the only thing he could. He moved. With a burst of adrenaline, he struck the match. The small flame flared to life just as the creature lunged. A thick, clawed hand swiped through the air where he had been just seconds before, slamming into the wooden wall with a deafening crack. Kaloy didn't think, he acted. He grabbed the oil lamp with his free hand and threw it. The glass shattered on impact. Fire erupted in a burst of heat and light, licking up the walls and floor. A deafening, inhuman screech tore through the air as the flames caught on the creature's skin. The smell of burning flesh filled the teeny house. Kaloy stumbled back, gasping, the heat pressing against his skin. He could barely hear over the shrieking, but outside, something else stirred. The others. New noise filled the air, a chorus of low, guttural growls. The ones outside had heard. And now, they were angry. Kaloy barely had time to react before the walls shook violently. Something slammed against the door, hard enough to send cracks splintering through the wood. Clawed hands scraped against the bamboo slats, prying, pushing. They were coming in. The creature inside thrashed wildly, still caught in the flames. It howled in pain, knocking into the walls, the ceiling, sending sparks flying. Smoke curled through the air, thick and suffocating. Kaloy caught, his lungs burning. He had to get out. Now. His mind latched onto the only exit left, the broken roof. It was risky, but staying inside was suicide. With shaking limbs, he grabbed onto the wooden support beam and hoisted himself up, ignoring the heat licking at his back. His fingers scrabbled against the raw edges of the roof, splinters biting into his skin. Below him, the creature screamed. The fire had consumed it, its body twisting in agony. The walls shook again, another blow from outside. The others were almost in. Kaloy's muscles burned, but he pulled himself higher, his legs kicking against the wall for leverage. His foot slipped once, his stomach lurched, but he held on. He had to finally. His hands found the edge of the torn roof. With one last push, he pulled himself up. His knees scraped against the sharp palm fronds as he rolled onto the thatched surface, gasping for breath. Then, stillness. The fire crackled below, illuminating the night with flickering light. Smoke curled into the air, rising toward the full moon. And then he saw them. Silhouettes. Dark figures crouched along the treetops, their glowing eyes fixed on him. More than he had ever imagined. The Aswangs were waiting. And Kaloy had nowhere left to run. Kaloy's chest heaved as he crouched on the fragile thatched roof, his fingers gripping the raw palm fronds for balance. His whole body trembled, not just from exhaustion but from the realization that he was surrounded. The Aswangs perched on the treetops, their glowing eyes locked onto him, their dark shapes blending into the night like shadows that had come to life. The fire below raged, sending thick smoke curling into the air. The creature inside the house was no longer screaming, either dead or too weak to move. But the others didn't flee. They didn't even flinch at the flames. Instead, they waited. Watching. Calculating. A shiver ran down Kaloy's spine. Really weren't they attacking? Then, from below, a noise. Crack. The roof beneath him shifted. His stomach twisted. The fire had weakened the structure. If he didn't move soon, he'd fall right back into the burning house. The Aswangs knew it too. He could hear their low, guttural breathing, feel their anticipation hanging thick in the air. They were waiting for him to make a mistake. Kaloy forced himself to think. The fire had helped him before, but now it was a trap. His only real chance was to get off the roof and run, but where? The trees were full of them. The ground wasn't safe either. Then, an idea. He took deep breath, steadying himself. His fingers reached for the matchbox still in his pocket. His last weapon. He couldn't outrun them. But maybe he didn't have to. Kaloy flicked the matchstick against the raw side of the box. A small flame sparked to life, barely enough to light a candle, but in the darkness, it was the only thing standing between him and death. He didn't hesitate. With a sharp inhale, he grabbed a handful of the dry palm fronds beneath him and set them ablaze. The fire caught instantly, spreading across the roof like a hungry beast. The dry leaves curled, crackled, turned to embers. The Aswangs reacted immediately. The moment the flames flared higher, they hissed and recoiled, their glowing eyes narrowing. Some of them leaped back into the darkness, vanishing into the trees. Others held their ground, but their bodies tensed, muscles coiling as if uncertain. Kaloy's heart pounded. It was working. They feared the fire. But the roof wouldn't hold much longer. A loud snap echoed beneath him. The bamboo beams groaned under his weight. The smoke burned his throat, making his eyes water. He had seconds, maybe less, before the whole thing collapsed. With one final burst of strength, he ran. His bare feet barely found traction on the slick palm leaves, but he didn't stop. He leaped, arms flailing, heart hammering. Then, he hit the ground. Pain exploded through his knees, but he didn't have time to stop. The moment his hands touched the earth, he pushed himself up and ran. Behind him, the house groaned and finally caved in, sending a tower of fire and embers into the air. The forest roared to life. The Aswangs shrieked, some scattering into the shadows, others howling in fury. The ground trembled beneath their movement. Kaloy didn't look back. His legs burned, his lungs ached, but he ran, blindly, desperately. The trees blurred past him. He could hear the Aswangs moving, rustling in the leaves, but they weren't chasing him directly. They were circling him, waiting. Then, out of nowhere, a shape emerged in front of him. Kaloy barely had time to react before a cold, clawed hand clamped around his wrist. A scream ripped from his throat as he struggled, twisting, kicking. But the grip was strong, inhumanly strong. The creature loomed over him, its face still hidden in the shadows. But then, it spoke. Kaloy. Apo, his body froze. The voice wasn't like the others. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't mocking. It was familiar. His breath hitched. His mind refused to believe it, but as the firelight flickered through the trees, revealing the figure in front of him, the truth hit him like a knife to the chest. It was Lola Berta. Her eyes, once warm and kind, now gleamed unnaturally, reflecting the fire like an animal's. Her hands, gnarled with age, now ended in sharp, curved claws. And worst of all, she was smiling. Not the gentle, loving smile he had grown up with. But something else. Something wrong. Something hungry. Kaloy's legs felt like they had turned to stone. His breath hitched in his throat as he stared at the impossible sight in front of him. Lola Berta, his protector, the woman who had raised him, was standing there, her eyes glowing like embers in the firelight. The warmth he had always known in her presence was gone, replaced Ila as something cold, something dark. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body refused to move. The clawed hand around his wrist tightened, not enough to hurt, but enough to keep him there. Enough to make him listen. Linli Apo, her voice was soft, almost affectionate, but there was something wrong in the way she said it, something that made his skin crawl. I told you before. You must always be careful at night. Kaloy swallowed hard, his pulse hammering in his ears. Lola, his voice came out in whisper, barely audible over the crackling fire behind him. Ano to? Bakit? She tilted her head, studying him. The flickering light cast strange shadows on her face, highlighting the unnatural sharpness of her features. You always had a strong spirit, she murmured. That's why they wanted you. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The Aswangs, they hadn't just been hunting him. They had been testing him. And Lola Berta she had known all along. His stomach twisted. You let them come. Her expression didn't change. I protected you for as long as I could. But the time comes for all of us, Apo. This is our way. No, Kaloy shook his head violently, stepping back, yanking his wrist free from her grasp. Hindi. Hindi ako ganito. For the first time, her expression softened, not with anger, but with something that looked almost like sadness. You don't have to be afraid. Kaloy's hands curled into fists. You lied to me. I kept you alive. Her voice was steady, unwavering. And now, you must decide. The forest was silent. The other Aswangs had stopped moving, stopped circling. They were waiting. Watching. Waiting for his choice. Kaloy's chest rose and fell in sharp, shallow breaths. He thought of his childhood, the stories Lola Berta used to tell him, the way she always warned him about the dangers of the night. He had trusted her. He had loved her. And now, the truth unraveled in front of him like a nightmare. But even in the middle of that horror, he understood. She had protected him. Raised him. But she had also prepared him for this. His fingers brushed against the matchbox in his pocket. His last weapon. The only thing standing between him and the creatures watching from the shadows. His choice. His mind raced. His legs burned, his lungs ached, but he pushed forward, deeper into the trees, away from the fire, away from the nightmare he had left behind. The Aswangs gave chase, their footsteps light, fast, unnatural. But the sun was rising. A faint glow spread across the horizon, turning the black sky into shades of deep blue. The light touched the treetops, and the growls behind him faded. The sounds of pursuit slowed. Kaloy didn't dare stop until he reached the clearing. The moment he broke through the last line of trees, he collapsed onto the dirt road, his entire body shaking. The sun had fully risen now, casting golden light over the land. He turned back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The forest stood quiet. The Aswangs were gone. But he knew the truth now. They were never really gone. Kaloy stared at the tree line for a long time, his heartbeat still pounding in his ears. The world around him felt different now, heavier, older. He had survived. But he also knew he could never go back.